Hello, everyone. Welcome to the When It Worked podcast. You're with your host, Julian Lee here. And today I'm joined by the wonderful Dr. Kim Saxton and Dr. Todd Saxton, probably the most highly qualified people I've ever had on the show. How exciting.
Wow.
I doubt that.
Yes, well, I like the modesty. But now you guys have written a fantastic book. And there's a lot of things that we can learn from that. Do you want to tell us a bit about what prompted you to write The Titanic Effect? Is that correct? The Titanic Effect?
Yes,
Yep.
It is.
Todd, why don't you kick it off?
So When It Works is great. What led us to write the book was when it doesn't work. And after years and years of working with a variety of entrepreneurs, our students, our alumni, other folks in the venture community, there are some clear kind of patterns that failed ventures who sink kind of run into. And we felt it was worth trying to package that and communicate that to those who are trying to start something, so that they avoid what we call the icebergs or debt bergs that can sink them and make things not work. So that was kind of the genesis of writing the book, and I'll turn it over to Kim to elaborate further.
Yeah. So you know that feeling when you're talking with someone and they're asking for advice and you're like, oh wait, I have given this advice before, like a lot of times. And so we started this as just like a talk at a conference, and then someone came up and said, you should write a book. And so then we did a workshop to see, and literally someone stood up and said, where were you 4 months ago? And we're like, oh, I guess we need to get this moving.
It's good, isn't it, when the people are talking to you and they're really telling you what they need, and you realize this is something I need to put out there. It's interesting, because the whole startup scene, it sort of had a real crazy boom where everybody was getting funded, and I think it led to a lot of inefficiencies with just about everything was getting greenlit, and then obviously it all contracted, and now people are needing to actually be efficient in what they're doing. Can you tell us what the kind of one of the biggest walls was that people were running into in this kind of more recent period?
Yeah, so we kind of divide the book into 4 different oceans, which is, kind of an odd way to do it in terms of like geography, but still works for us. We have the human ocean, the marketing ocean, the technical ocean, and the strategy ocean. And each of those oceans kind of has 1 or 2 big things that can really bring you down. Todd likes to talk about one of the things that people do when they found, and I think we'll let him start there, and then we can talk a little bit about the marketing problems we see.
Yeah, so one of the big ones that we talk about, and as Kim said, we kind of divide these buckets, if you will, into oceans that can sink you, extending that metaphor of the Titanic and icebergs. And one of those is the human ocean, and the people that you start a company with, or bring in as advisors and others, and the way you allocate equity early on. So, it's not unusual. We call it the Curse of Thirdsies. You have 3 people sitting around at the bar, drawing something on a napkin, and they're like, hey, we'll split it 3 ways. It's going to be fantastic. Well, one of the 3 after a few months gets distracted by life and job and is kind of doing their own thing and not really helping move things forward. But you've already allocated all of this equity. So there are ways to address that by making sure you have a vesting schedule so that you earn that equity over time as you make contributions to the venture. But over allocating equity and dividing it amongst all of it amongst the founders at the beginning is one of those challenges. For those that, I know at least some of your audience are looking at things that are more of a side gig perhaps, or a hobby turning into a side venture, which is great. And I think where we see some debt bergs with those folks are really more with partners, family members. Julian, we were talking about writing a book and the challenges of that. And fortunately, because Kim and I were doing this together and had a co-author, we were feeling that pain together. But I think in the side gig economy, one of the things that you need to be very clear on that can raise a lot of human debt is your partner engagement and support. And if you turn a hobby into something that's income producing, you want to make sure you have that. I may like to play the bagpipes, but if I tried to turn it into a business and make money from it, I don't think Kim would be very happy, or the audience. So make sure you have support, and that turning something into a business is really what you want to do.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that's almost how a lot of these ideas start up, like the in the bar with the napkin, and then what ends up happening. I mean, it's just impossible that three people are going to equally share the work, but you don't really know that going into it. So, I mean, do you really have to sit down and just try to visualize exactly what the tasks are going to be, and then allocate the equity, I guess, after you've worked out? But it's almost impossible to sort of know what you're going to be doing. But is that what you need to do? Sit down and just itemize everything like that?
Well, and you
Yeah,
have to think about, I was going to say, you have to think about people's skills and who's doing what. And I mean, we've coached a couple, more like a dozen startups through this early stage. And, go slow, like earn it as you go. Maybe you only give out 20% to start with, and you get it up to 50%. I mean, you never know when you're going to have to bring in a professional CEO, or someone has a unique talent you really need, and they're going to want equity. So dipping it all up at the beginning and then having to take it away from people is a really bad plan. It just feels odd that you have this equity and you're like, don't divvy it up. It feels awkward. But it's a lot more awkward when you have to go, oh, hey, can you give yours back? And at the worst extreme, we've actually seen somewhere where someone sent us a letter to warn us about what had happened in another state, because they were now mad at this person in their next go around from what had happened in their first go around.
Not good.
Not good. And the flip side is a solopreneur also, needs more help than just themselves. And often we do see people say, oh, I just want to do this all myself, and I don't want to give up any equity. I want to hold on to all of it. Well, I mean, that can only get you so far. Sometimes, if you keep everything, the pie is only this big. But when you bring others in, maybe the pie gets to be this big. So your part still stays the same, but the whole thing grows. And so knowing when to bring somebody else in to help you is also really important.
Understood.
Sorry, Julian. I was just going to say, extending that. When you're sitting in the bar with a napkin, you don't even have a pie, right? You've got 2 blueberries and a teaspoon of flour. So dividing up that pie, prematurely can again really cause some debt burdens.
Definitely. And do you ever find that people get a bit too overexcited about their idea, and they sort of charge so far ahead without really even knowing if anybody cares about the idea?
Indeed. I mean, one recent startup we've been working with, they prototyped a product and we're on the road of launching it and doing clinical trials, and it's in the life sciences area. And we were like, wait, there is already a competitor there. How come they haven't carved up more of the market? I mean, are you just going to be dividing a small part of the market between the two of you, or are you going to be able to grow, how well this concept is doing? And after about 6 months, we realized, oh no, we're just going to be dividing a small part of the market between 2 companies instead of 1. And so they did a massive pivot out of humans into animals, and have seen tremendous traction since then. So, yeah.
Sorry, I lost audio there for a bit, but I think it works fine. It'll still stream the audio. Just my computer froze up. And how do we do this kind of pivot? I mean, how do we work out that we've got something, or whether we just think we've got something?
So I can talk a little bit about that, although from the marketing perspective, certainly Kim has the expertise. But one of the things, and you were hinting at this, I think, with technical founders, is they get so excited about the technology or the product that they go way down the road without making sure they fully understand the problem and the customer's perspective of the problem that they're trying to solve. So We really encourage founders to get out there, talk to customers, and not even talk to them to present your solution. Initially, talk to them about the problem and either observe or have conversations that allow you to understand the perspective of the customer. What's the language they're using? What are their current solutions? Or do they even recognize they have a problem? Because if you have to educate your customer about a problem that they didn't even know they had, it's going to be a much longer and more expensive endeavor to get them to appreciate your solution. So prematurely going with the solution as opposed to talking to a prospective customer to get their understanding of the problem, and then having that coincide with the technology development is really important to avoid that false hope that you're talking about, where you think you have the magic solution, and the reality is customers just don't appreciate that.
Yeah, just about everything, comes down to knowing what your ideal prospect wants, what keeps them up at night, and once you really know all of those problems, that kind of allows you to pivot, is my feeling about it. And, you can identify you've got it wrong because you understand the pain much better.
So I can maybe share very briefly. We talked about the Titanic book and how we operationalize this ourselves. First, as we talked about, we had presented on the topic, a lot of audience interest and enthusiasm. In fact, an audience member who encouraged us to write the book. But going straight from that kind of proof of concept to writing the whole book would have been taking a big leap. So instead, we kind of went through several steps of mapping out kind of the platform, if you will, and the way to communicate that, sharing with entrepreneurs and investors locally and beyond to get their feedback. And then we literally wrote the first chapter and got that out to, again, an informed group to kind of express how we were trying to package it. And we made some significant changes in the structure of how we were communicating the ideas, the examples we were using, from the feedback we got, and that was very helpful to us. And I'm not saying we ended up with anywhere near the perfect product, but again, just on the theme of how do you operationalize these things and get input, it's got to be an iterative kind of approach to getting feedback along the way, I believe.
Yeah, and one thing we talk about in the technical ocean is a low fidelity or a low tech solution. So, some people keep coming to us like, we want to spend $100,000 and build this platform because software is it, and they don't even know if people will use it. I mean, one of the classic examples we give is some alums who they like to make meals and swap them, and so they wanted to create this platform where you could sign up and swap meals with other people. And so we said, hey, before you spend $50,000 on a software to do this, why don't you set up an Excel spreadsheet in Google Docs and let people, go and sign up and see what happens. And sure enough, after a month, it turns out like 3 people wanted to swap meals. Everybody said, oh, this is a great idea, but I don't have the time, or we're too picky. And I mean, so they're like, fine, then we can just do this informally. There's not really a market for we all make meals and swap them.
Interesting, yeah. We think, oh, let's make an app for this, we'll make an app for that. I mean, if people don't want to do that thing offline, then you've got nothing, have you?
Right. I mean, just recently we were also talking to someone who was creating this platform to integrate data from all these different sources so that they could predict something. And we're like, yeah, but I mean, just because you can use machine learning doesn't mean that if you put all this data together, you're actually going to find anything. Why don't you just pick 50 people, put it in a spreadsheet, and see if there are any patterns that come out before you spent all the money? And then we started talking about all the problems that you have when you try to develop software. And then they said, oh, yeah, we already scrapped the first version and we're on version 2. It was like, oh, okay. And you don't even know if it's going to work yet. And you're on version 2. So maybe pull back a bit.
Pull back a bit. So we talked about knowing what the people want. Do you have a solution that people want? Is it something that we can build a solution for that people will use? What else did we talk about? Splitting the equity, working out, who's going to do what, and how you're going to, identify that so everybody knows going forward. And was there another ocean?
Well, so the other one I want to talk about is also, as you're trying to understand customers, look around and figure out who has access to your customers. Again, you don't have to do all the work yourselves, but sometimes you can find partners who have access to your customers. And by working with those partners, you can fine tune your ideas, but also you can drive down your marketing costs. I think a lot of times small businesses do not realize how expensive it is to reach out and touch people. If you want to use pay-per-click advertising, you're going to spend for every click, and maybe half those clicks are going to be qualified. And among the half that are qualified, maybe you can convert 10%. So, each click ends up costing you a lot of money. You can try and use social media, but again, now you're paying again, or if it's free, it takes a long time. So I think, frequently we talk to consumer-based brands, and the answer we have to give is like, how many millions do you have? And they'd say no millions. So what am I going to do? It's just really hard to reach your consumer end users without millions of dollars. And so thinking about who already has a relationship, there, at least in the United States, there was this frozen food company that would go through schools to sell their frozen foods. That's because the schools have all the families. So think about partners. Who else can help you on this journey? How do you create a win between you and them?
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Leveraging other people and working out how you could mutually have some sort of relationship with them. I talked to a gentleman called Regan McGregor who had some software. He was using the Salesforce software, and they have these big events called Dreamforce, and he was basically just hijacking the social media and built his company up to be massive and got bought out just by basically zero paid ads. And I think that what you said, Kim, pay-per-click is very expensive, and we have this idea, build it and they will come. Well, they won't come. So you need to work out some sort of hacks and really get creative of how you can reach out to people, and it's just free audience, and relationships with people that have your people.
Right. I mean, trade meetings are always painful and expensive, but they still work. And that's because you've got a critical mass of people who are your ideal customer, and so you have to think about, how do you do that? And there's lots of ways to do it in a guerrilla fashion. That's how I think of that Dreamforce example, is guerrilla marketing. When you're small, you kind of have to, think of ways to cleverly glom on to what somebody else is doing, because you can't afford to do it. But yeah.
Forces you to be efficient. Yeah,
it does.
I think we've lost Todd, have we?
I think we've lost Todd.
Oh, he's just very relaxed.
He's like so relaxed that he's unmoving.
He's frozen. He's hit by an iceberg. Wonderful.
Not.
Well, hopefully not. If you want to check out this book, if you are in the startup space, you're working through that process, you need to look into some of these icebergs and learn about them. So the Titanic Effect.com is where you'll find this book written by some very clever people who have talked to a lot of people and done a lot of research in the area. So I'd like to thank Dr. Kim and Dr. Todd for coming on.
It's our pleasure. And we love the other side of the world. So as we mentioned, in 2007, we were in Brisbane for 6 months, and we can hardly believe it's been 15 years. It feels like it was yesterday with all the amazing things that we did on that side of the pond.
What did you do in Brisbane? What's the Brisbane connection?
We taught. We took a sabbatical from Indiana University, and we taught at University of Queensland.
Oh, okay, that's a good university. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah. We certainly did. We loved our girls were in school. We could walk them to school every day through the park and looking at all the parrots and the beautiful birds. And we had such a marvelous time in Australia. I'll keep thinking about when we can come back.
Wonderful. Good weather. A bit warmer than Indianapolis.
Yes, it was quite a bit warmer in Indianapolis. I don't think we got there on January 1st. So we saw the New Year's Eve fireworks. And we left in July, and I don't think we ever wore even maybe a sweatshirt for a couple of weeks. So
Wonderful.
it was quite warm.
Todd's made a comeback.
Oh, he's made a comeback. Yay.
Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? He's gone and got his fine. All right, wrap it up there. Todd. Hi, Todd. Thanks for coming back.
Hey, not sure what happened there. I could hear you and see everything, but apparently I was a blank. So now I'm back in, along with my buddy Jon Snow there. You can see over my shoulder.
Yeah.
I still haven't watched that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I like it.
Mum told me that it was inappropriate not to not let the boys watch it, so it put me off. She said there was lots of male nudity.
Well,
that's not why you watched it, Kim.
No, we watched it with our children who were in their mid-20s at that point, so I think we were okay.
Safe but awkward.
Yeah. Well, they watched it in different places. They would watch it at the same time in their place, and we'd watch it in our place and chat about it on a text.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to watch that. I will definitely watch that. So thanks again, Kim and Todd, for coming on. Some great content there, and I think people really are in that frame, quite a few people, and will benefit from checking out the TitanicEffect.com.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julian.
Have a great day.
Julian, one other point I had wanted to make for the audience that got lost when I was dropped. When you talk about the debt bergs and the challenges, I think sometimes entrepreneurs get caught up in this kind of trope of what a successful entrepreneur looks like, and they feel that pressure to raise money or go big. And I think entrepreneurs should be very thoughtful and careful about, when and if they raise money, for example. You can be a very successful entrepreneur with a side gig and without going out and raising venture capital. And don't get sucked into that, kind of myth of the successful entrepreneurs when it goes and raises $1 million plus dollars, et cetera. There are lots of ways to be innovative and entrepreneurial and successful without following that path. So apologies for trailing on at the end there, but I think it's a really important point for your audience.
It is a good point, and it forces you to be efficient in what you're doing if you don't have that unending pool of money.
Right.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again, and thanks everyone for watching and listening. I'll see you very soon on another episode.